Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. We have a great show on tap for today's Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. Really appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your day to watch the program here. Two topics that I want to hit. We're going to take a look at some edge rusher trade targets for Philadelphia because that's a pressing need on this team, and the numbers back that up. And Philadelphia making a couple of roster moves going into Sunday's game against the New York Giants. And in speaking of Eagles-Giants on Sunday, Philadelphia's owned this rivalry. They are 16-4 over the Giants in their last 20 matchups. And here inside the walls of Chat Sports, we have a great rivalry and battle as well. This is a look at the subscribers picked up over the last 7 days. And Eagles now is trailing Giants now by 5 subscribers. Hopefully this isn't an indication of what goes down at MetLife Stadium on Sunday. So if you're looking for Eagles coverage every single day, hit that subscribe button. But also, I can't stand losing to the losers in New York and losing to Giants now. So let's dominate them. I don't even want this to be a question. Hit that subscribe button. I promise you, you'll really enjoy our coverage. An issue this season for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's the Birds being able to generate a consistent pass rush and sack the quarterback. And when you look at the NFL sack leaders this year, Philadelphia ranks 25th among 32 teams in team sacks. Philadelphia has 11 as they're off to this 3-2 start here in 2024. The top 4 teams well above Philadelphia. The New York Giants are number 1 in sacks by team with 26. Their defensive line is really good, led by Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. Going to be a big matchup against the Eagles here on Sunday. The Denver Broncos have 22 sacks. They've really turned it around after a sluggish start to the year. Led by Brian Flores. Minnesota Vikings have, I think, the best defense in the NFL overall, and their sack production really good. Third place with 20, and then the New York Jets tied with Minnesota with 20 sacks as well. So Philadelphia, 15 sacks behind the New York Giants, and that is a big discrepancy from first place all the way to 25th. And remember 2022? That was a really fun season for those of us who love defensive football and love putting quarterbacks under siege. En route to the Super Bowl, Philadelphia led the National Football League with 70 sacks that year. That was 15 more than any team. But in 2023 and to start 2024, it has been a completely different story. As far as players who the Eagles could trade for at the defensive end pass rusher spot, couple of different routes that Howie Roseman could maneuver and go. Do you want to go after a superstar player? Obviously, that would require giving up a lot of assets. That would be a pricey trade. Do you want to target a veteran? That veteran is not going to have that superstar impact. They're going to have a lower impact, but they're also going to be a little bit more affordable on the bottom line and as far as the compensation that you have to surrender in that trade. Do you want scheme familiarity? This player would know the scheme. They could be a plug-and-play player and help out this Vic Fangio defense, which is complex to learn, hopefully with the snap of a finger. So let's start off with some superstar trade targets. We've talked about Maxx Crosby before. Maxx Crosby fits the bill of an elite player and a superstar pass rusher, but he would cost a ton. And why a Crosby trade could make sense for the Eagles, why it could go down, and his name has started to come to the forefront as a player who maybe the Raiders get rid of. Las Vegas earlier this week traded away another star player in Davante Adams. So does that signal that the Raiders are going to fully sell, that they're going to tear it down, completely rebuild? Las Vegas could also look to stockpile picks. They're not in a position where they're going to win, and they're looking for a franchise quarterback. They could use all of those picks to move up the draft order, depending on where they are in the draft order, to take their quarterback and leave no doubt, or use those picks to really rebuild their organization. And for Philadelphia, in bringing in Maxx Crosby, Philadelphia would love him, first of all, because he embodies what the city is all about. Blue collar, tough, bring your lunch pail to work type of guy, and he fulfills a massive need for the Eagles. He also plays the game with the relentless and nonstop motor He's just so fun to watch. He's one of my favorite edge rushers in the NFL for that reason, because he doesn't just rely on being a good athlete. He relies on technique. He relies on effort. He relies on hustle. And he's just a tough player who will bulldoze you, get by you, and plays the game with great energy. Star pass rusher part 2 for another team that could sell in the Cleveland Browns. That's Myles Garrett. But Myles Garrett, like Maxx Crosby, would also require a haul. But Myles Garrett is putting together one of the best seasons and careers among any edge rusher that you can remember in recent memory. And last year, with those 14 sacks in 2023, he was the Defensive Player of the Year. This year, once again, dominant, been hobbled a little bit by a knee injury, has 4 sacks in 6 games for Cleveland. But this is one of the better players of this generation of football, and is going to go down on the all-decade team when that comes out at the end of this decade. He has been absolutely phenomenal. He is a quick-twitched, built-up, freak, one-of-one athlete who also has a plethora of pass-rushing moves, and we saw what he's capable of doing against a team like the Eagles, where even if he is held in check with getting after the quarterback and sacks, how about some of the plays that he made as a run defender off the backside tackling Saquon Barkley? How about him hurdling the Eagles line to block that Jake Elliott field goal, which was then returned 50 yards back to the house for a momentum-changing scoop and score for former Eagle Roddy McLeod last week? Myles Garrett, one of the best players in the history of football, and Bruce Smith leads the NFL all-time in sack production. He had 219 years. Myles Garrett, who knows if he could play 19 years? That's really difficult to do, but he's on that trajectory right now. 92 and a half in 8 years. He might have 100 by season's end. Will he become the all-time sack leader? Obviously, that's very hard to do, but it is pretty telling the start that he's off to since being a first overall pick out of Texas A&M back in 2017. Which position do the Eagles need to target? I think it's edge rusher as priority number 1. Do you think there's another position? Let me know down in the comment section right now. We always want you to have a voice on this show. Coming up next, we went from star player trade targets to more affordable edge rusher trade targets. These players more realistic to bring in. Also, Philadelphia making a couple of roster moves. That's coming your way just around the corner. But first, really want to thank Game Time for being an incredible sponsor here under the Chat Sports umbrella and on Eagles Now. And in the ticketing marketplace, it is very competitive and vast, but Game Time is the best app and the only app that you should be using when it comes to getting tickets. Now, I talk sports for a living, so sometimes I need to unplug, decompress from the sporting realm. And to do that, I love comedy, and I love going to comedy shows. I love music. I have a very musically inclined family, so I like going to concerts. Theater events are fun. Been to a couple of Blue Man Group showings from time to time. You can get all types of tickets on the Game Time app. They specialize in last-minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed. And the more that you wait until the start of the event, the more that prices drop. I also love the technology and the user experience because you can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. For instance, you want to go to Eagles-Giants at MetLife Stadium. That is the vantage point, and they give you the price point from this particular seat. And some of the other ticketing apps, they'll have an empty stadium. I don't care what it looks like because it's not going to look like that when I'm at the actual game. I want to see fans in the stands. And Game Time gives you that option. So download the app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Terms apply. First purchase only. What time is it? Game time. We'll put that link down below in the show notes, and it's attached to the pinned comment of today's Philadelphia Eagles. Now, as for some more affordable pass rushing trade targets for Howie Roseman and this organization, 4 players come to mind here, and they're all veterans who have been in the league for a long time, but they're just not going to cost the pretty penny that Garrett or Crosby would because both of those players still have some prime years left. Za'Darius Smith of the Cleveland Browns, Deatrich Wise of the New England Patriots, Emmanuel Ogbah of the Miami Dolphins, Von Miller of the Buffalo Bills. And let me say this, Howie Roseman has been very aggressive in making in-season trades over the last few years. Have all of them worked out? No, but there's always going to be a little bit of a miss rate when you're trying to trade for players. For Za'Darius Smith, defensive end for the Browns, signed a 2-year, $23 million contract with Cleveland back in March. They spent a lot of money this offseason and in off-seasons prior. He has a 2024 base salary of $1.2 million. Was a 2015 fourth-round pick out of Kentucky by the Baltimore Ravens, and that's where he really became a player. And then he went to Minnesota and Green Bay, and he has put up some really good sack production. He has 3 seasons with 10-plus sacks with the Packers and the Vikings from 2019 through 2022. He ranks 15th in pressures since 2022 with 70, and his Pro Football Focus ranked this year among pass rushers 41 of 114. As for what he's done this year, because the Browns have been so bad offensively, hasn't helped out the defensive side of the football, but he's still been a good player. Opposite of Myles Garrett, 16 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 TFLs, no fumbles forced, no fumble recoveries. That's fine. His job at 6'4", 270 is to pressure the quarterback. As for Deatrich Wise, he is a 30-year-old edge rusher who's 6'5", 280. He's put together a productive NFL career. He is not a star player by any means. Weiss would be more of a rotational pass rusher. So as far as him being a needle mover, he wouldn't really be a needle mover for this Philadelphia team. But if they want another edge rusher to add to the depth of this Eagles defense, who's not going to cost all that much money via a trade, then Weiss could be that player. Emmanuel Ogbah, another player who has had a very successful NFL career. Now, are his best days behind him? Yeah, I think that Ogbah's best days are in the rear view here, but he'll give you some speed. He'll give you some twitch. He'll be able to bend the edge and get some quarterback pressures and sacks from time to time. The Miami Dolphins right now are 2-3, so they're not fully in sell mode. Tua Tagovailoa expected to come back over the next couple of weeks. Wild what's happened to him with concussions over the last few years and throughout his career. But if the Dolphins continue to lose, or if they really slide, could Ogbah become expendable? And then there's Von Miller. Von Miller is one of the better edge rushers of this generation of football, right? And he has put together a spectacular career. Like Myles Garrett, he too went to Texas A&M. And Von Miller is not the player who he once was when he injected fear into the opposition week in, week out, especially while with the Denver Broncos. But for Von Miller, he's been disappointing since going to Buffalo. They haven't reaped what they thought they were getting in Von Miller because the production and availability hasn't been there, but he does have some scheme familiarity, which we noted a little bit earlier. He was a Pro Bowler under Vic Fangio in 2019, and we've seen how Bryce Huff this year started off in a 2-point stance as a pass rusher. He was doing nothing because that's what Vic Fangio prefers his edge rushers to do, as well as dropping back in coverage. Now that Bryce Huff is in a 4-point stance, 2 hands, 2 feet on the ground, last week finally popped off against the Cleveland Browns. That's where he had all 10 of his sacks last year with the New York Jets. So Philadelphia hasn't really used him in the manner that the Jets used him last year. But with Miller, you know that he's a scheme fit. You know that occasionally, as a rotational type of edge rusher, that is his specialty. Von, we're going to put you on the field. We want you to pin your ears back, and we want you to attack the quarterback. He's very good at doing that. He is currently serving a suspension, a little bit of an ugly situation in that regard, so that might cause the Eagles to press pause, and he's 35 years old and declining. But because of that, this would be a move to bring in a player for a stretch run and a stretch run solely. Lastly, Philadelphia Eagles making some roster moves here. Dallas Goedert, unlikely to play against the New York Giants, according to Jeff McLean, with that hamstring issue that he suffered against Cleveland. He could miss a few games. It's bad injury news for the Birds. We talked about that on yesterday's show. Be sure to check it out if you haven't already done so. And good timing, I guess, as far as depth, because Philadelphia's opened up the practice window for tight end Albert Okwuegbunam. He had to undergo core muscle surgery, and he was put on IR at the end of August. So now he is back. His 21-day practice window has been open. It's going to be Grant Calcaterra and Jack Stoll as the top two tight ends for this Eagles team, so expect to see them a lot. But at some point in the near future, Albert O could be making his return to this Eagles roster. Philadelphia this week also signing the 30-year-old cornerback in Perry Nickerson. He's been in the league for a very long time. Just another veteran to have at that cornerback position. I'm not sure if that was because they had some uncertainty about Darius Slay's injury. He hurt his knee against the Browns last week, but the good news for Slay, he practiced on Wednesday, and the arrow is pointing up for his status against the New York Giants on Sunday as well. So Philadelphia, for the most part, outside of Jordan Mailata and Dallas Goedert, a pretty healthy football team. Speaking of Eagles-Giants, we'll be live right here on Eagles Now for another watch party. The show begins with myself and producer Chip. An hour before kickoff, we'll preview the game. Then during the game, best place to experience an Eagles game day outside of being at the actual game. We'll see you starting at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So hit that sub button, hit that bell icon, turn on those notifications. Therefore, anytime we push out a show, anytime we go live, you'll be notified.